Verizon outside plant supervisors must ensure that all employees reporting to them have and utilize rubber insulating gloves whenever necessary during the performance of their work assignment. It's important to fully understand your responsibilities as a supervisor that relate to the management of this important piece of personal protective equipment. All Verizon outside plant employees are issued Class II Type 1 insulating gloves. Each of these gloves has a date stamp stating when they need to be retested. Gloves can be used until the last day of the month and year stamped on the glove. As their supervisor, you must ensure that technicians know how to field test and store their gloves as described in the VZTV video, Insulating Gloves, Testing, Use, and Storage. Understand fully when they must use them. Use them in accordance with all applicable practices. Each set of insulating gloves includes 2 insulating gloves, 2 cotton liners, 2 leather protectors. Leather protectors are never to be used as work gloves. Leather protector gloves must only be worn with insulating gloves. Gauntlets of leather protector gloves must be 2 inches shorter than insulating gloves. 1 storage bag. Do not place anything in the storage bag other than the insulating glove set. Supervisor shall not allow an employee to perform work duties in a work environment where electrical conductors are present without a pair of retested and field-tested insulating gloves that have passed the testing process. Remember, technicians do not wear insulating gloves to handle energized power conductors. Verizon policy is to not handle live, energized power conductors. Insulating gloves are to be worn in case there is unintentional contact with energized conductors. There are many times when Verizon employees are required to wear insulating gloves. Here is a partial list of some of the instances where insulating gloves must be worn. Placing and removing temporary bonds. Insulating gloves must be worn when placing the bond and when removing the bond. This will prevent any arc flash from an energized object from flashing over the technician's hands. Working at substations and power stations. Because of the potential for unintentional ground from the power station grid work, technicians must always wear insulating gloves in this environment. When using the C9970 188A voltage detector to test for DC voltage. Working at personal communication sites at high voltage locations. Driving a ground rod. Buried electric can be a hazard when driving a ground rod. Insulating gloves are to be worn while driving the ground rod. Once the ground rod has been driven to its proper depth, the insulating gloves are to be removed, and the ground rod tested with a voltage detector before proceeding. Whenever contact with electrical power is possible, this includes whenever placing or removing strand. Insulating gloves must be worn until the strand is tensioned and dead-ended. In this instance, the gloves are worn, and a grounding strand roller must be used as well. In addition, insulating gloves must be available in the bucket of an aerial lift whenever the lift is occupied and/or used. Exposing buried joint plant while hand digging. Whenever Verizon plant is being exposed in a trench or excavation, always wear insulating gloves while digging. When placing poles near power. The employee on the ground that may come in contact with the pole while it is being placed must wear insulating gloves. These are the most recognized times when insulating gloves are required to be used. However, any time a technician feels that there may be an unintentional contact with power conductors, insulating gloves must be used. If the technician's pre-job survey determines that electrical contact is unavoidable, they must stop and notify their supervisor immediately for direction. All Verizon insulating gloves must be returned to the vendor for retest every 9 months. Verizon supervisors will receive an email from the retest vendor explaining that their insulating gloves are due for retest. This email should arrive approximately 1 month before the retest date. The email will notify you, as the supervisor, how many insulating glove sets the vendor's records show need to be retested, as well as sizes of the gloves they have on file. Verizon supervisors must return the email confirming the number of pairs and sizes they require. The vendor will ship to the supervisor the requested amount and sizes prior to their expiration dates. The supervisor must collect the old gloves from the employee and issue them a new pair once the new gloves have been received. The old pairs of gloves must be returned promptly to the vendor for credit. The supervisor will only be charged for testing on all gloves that are returned and pass the retest. If they are not returned or fail the retest process, the supervisor will be charged for a new pair of insulating gloves. The supervisor must process the invoices for retesting and/or new glove replacement promptly upon receipt. It is important that your technicians understand how insulating gloves are to be tested, stored, and worn. More importantly, they must understand when they are to be used. Be smart. Make sure your employees understand what electrical hazards are. Be aware. Make sure your employees identify the potential electrical hazards around them. Be focused. Make sure your employees continue to reassess their work zone, that their attention remain on the work they are doing, and that they are working in accordance with all policies and procedures. Be equipped. Make sure your employees are using their personal protective equipment at all times when appropriate, including their rubber insulating gloves.